again, welcome. And on behalf of the 3 organizations that brought you this film and the panel tonight, I want to welcome you. My name is Leigh Williams, and I'm one of the co-founders of Towards Zero Waste. As you enter the room, we want to ask you to please put a comment in the chat to say hi, let us know where you're from. We're also going to encourage you to put any questions and comments in the chat for our panelists. And our team will collate them and get them to our moderator. Going to give a few more minutes for people to kind of file in, get that chat going a little bit. All right, those who are just coming in, on behalf of the 3 organizations that brought you the film, I want to welcome you. And I'm Leigh Williams, one of the co-founders of Towards Zero Waste. Please put a comment in chat and let us know where you're from, in North Carolina or elsewhere. We'd love to see where everybody's coming from tonight. And we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Same on Facebook, we're on Facebook Live. So if you're on Facebook, in the comments, let everybody know that you're there, and let us know what questions or what comments you have about the film. We do understand that if a few people got back to us that they had some issues viewing the film. So if that is the case for you, send us a little note, and we are going to hopefully work with the film makers to get that straightened out.
I'd like to give a special shout out to Linda, who's a 6th grade teacher. Thank you for for teaching and for all the teachers who are on this. You are just amazing.
Excellent.
Yes, I was wondering, Linda, if you would like to share with us where you are a teacher. I have a 7th grader, so. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, and I think the audience members probably are not able to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay. Well, you can type it in the chat.
Type it in chat, yeah. We had a sellout event. We had 200 people on the film, so so hopefully we'll have a good crowd tonight.
Great to see Amin Davis here as well. Hi, Amin.
Yeah, welcome everybody. We've had some more people come in, so I'm just going to introduce us one more time. I'm Leigh Williams, and I'm one of the co-founders of Towards Zero Waste. As you enter the room, give us a comment to say hi and where you're from. I see some Cary, I see some Henderson, Raleigh, more Cary, Carborough, love Carborough, Durham. And in just about maybe one more minute, we'll go ahead and get started. Raleigh, Durham, great. Okay, sounds like somebody was having a little trouble with the film. Sorry about that. All right. Okay, I have right at one more minute. Okay, welcome everybody, and welcome on Facebook Live as well. And go ahead and put in the comments on Facebook Live where you're joining from as well. And we are recording this, so we hope to have a recording to send out to anybody who can't make it tonight, who couldn't make it, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. And I do have 7:05, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. A little bit about the organizations that have brought you the film. And as I introduce these organizations, I'll ask those that are part of each organization to give a little wave. Pachamama RTP is part of the Pachamama Alliance, a nonprofit organization dedicated to creating environmentally sustainably, socially just, and spiritually fulfilling world. The local chapter convenes project drawdown workshops to help individuals and organizations learn how they can do their part to reverse global warming. Thank you, Pachamama RTP. The Earth Justice Action Group at Eno River Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Durham focuses on the climate and ecological crises as moral issues based on a belief in the inherent dignity and worth of all humans and the interdependent web of all existence of which we are part. Earth Justice works in the congregation and community to build awareness of our material and spiritual connections with each other and with nature, and to support practices that benefit both the community and the environment to create a just, resilient, and regenerative world. Thank you, Earth Justice Action Group. And Toward Zero Waste North Carolina is a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting waste-conscious living across our state. Powered by a group of amazing volunteers, our mission is to not only raise awareness around environmental issues such as plastic pollution, food waste, overflowing landfills, carbon imbalance, water and air pollution, and the environmental injustice related to these issues, but also to create action to tackle these issues in big and small ways. We have local groups across the state and would love for you to join or start one to help build a Toward Zero Waste mindset in your community. And now I'm excited to welcome our panelists. And panelists, if you will give a little wave when you're introduced, we will start with Linda. Linda Watson is the founder of the Cook for Good project, which helps people save money, eat well, and make a difference. She is the author of 2 books, Wildly Affordable Organic, Save Money, Eat Fabulous Food, and Make a Difference, all on $5 a day or less, and 50 Weeks of Green, Recipes and Romance. Through Cook for Good and political action, Linda raises awareness of how changing our food system can help address the climate crisis, environmental injustice, and biodiversity loss. Learn more and subscribe to her free newsletter at cookforgood.com. Linda also convenes drawdown workshops on how to reverse global warming with Pachamama RTP. Steve Kalland, give a wave, Steve, is the Executive Director of the North Carolina Clean Energy Technology Center at NC State University and has over 25 years of experience in the clean energy field. Steve directs the strategic vision of the center and its programs, including activities in renewable energy and clean power, energy efficiency and green buildings, and clean transportation. He currently serves on the boards of directors of the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association and the Research Triangle Clean Tech Cluster, on the advisory board of the Environmental and Energy Study Institute in Washington, D.C., and the Duke Energy State President's Advisory Council. Steve lives in Cary with his wife, 3 children, and a golden retriever named Tucker. Tatiana Height is the Program Director for Partners for Environmental Justice. They is a native of Chicago, Illinois, and a 2-time Cornhusker alum with a Bachelor of Arts in Great Plains Studies and a Master of Community and Regional Planning. In addition to her duties at Partners for Environmental Justice, she is pursuing a Doctor of Education in Agriculture and Extension Education at NC State University. In their free time, Tatiana enjoys traveling, karaoke, kayaking, and reading. Hope Horton's background is broad and varied, from a professional musician to corporate manager to sound and energy healer and teacher to helping build an intentional community called Common Ground Ecovillage. It is at Common Ground that for the past 7+ years, her chief focus has been to foster governance and cooperative skills practices that are in tune with the regenerative vision and culture we want to manifest in these crazy times. Her deepest fulfillment and joy comes from spending time in our glorious land, particularly around wildflowers. And lastly, Mary Sell is a member of the Raleigh Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. She has a master's in environmental policy and planning from the University of Michigan and is committed to providing sustainability solutions for Raleigh as the community grows. You can regularly find her riding around Raleigh with her 2 kids in tow. Make sure to wave and say hi if you see her in the bike lane. Awesome. And so now I'm happy to introduce our moderator for tonight. Emily Barrett is with Pachamama RTP. Emily, take it away.
Thanks so much, Leigh, and thanks for inviting me to moderate the panel. I really enjoyed the documentary 2040, the fact-based dreaming frame of a dad looking at what his daughter Velvet's future might look like in 2040. So I don't know if you guys heard this quote, but I wanted to raise it for you. We have everything we need right now to make it happen. So tonight, I would love to hear questions from you in the audience, so feel free to put it in the chat bar. But I'll kick it off with Linda. Linda, you usually teach about healthy, thrifty cooking at the personal level. What can we all do to promote plant-rich eating and wasting less food at the community level?
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everybody for being here towards Zero Waste, and everyone. I'm so happy to have watched that movie. Every meal is an opportunity for you to make a difference. But when you go somewhere, you have a chance to multiply your effect. So I was on the Raleigh Environmental Advisory Board, and this year the new city council said, let's have all the board members come to this big event that is Raleigh Unleashed, and we're going to plan all these things. So I said, that's great. I'll write to the organizers and ask them about their plans for a plant-based, low-waste lunch, because they were going to serve us lunch. And I realized I was writing the same letter that I've written to multiple organizations. Are you going to have food for me? Do you have a plan for what to do with the extra food? What are you going to do about the serving implements and so forth? So I wrote that up in a template and put that on my website. You can go there, and next time you go to an event, you can do this several weeks before the event, as soon as you know about the event, because it takes a lot of time to plan these things. Send them off a note and say, first of all, I'm so excited about your event. I really want to come. And are you going to serve plant-based food, or whatever your particular thing is? So if you're vegetarian, vegan, you just want to make sure there's plant-rich options for everyone, say that. So make your ask, and then give them a reason why it helps them out with their goals. So for the Raleigh event, I said, Raleigh has this goal for reducing greenhouse gases by 80% by 2050. Here's how serving plant-based meals will do that. So I'm tying my request in with their action. Then I give them a little bit more in case they're sold on that, but they need something to take to their supervisor, or they want to just feel better about it. So here's some statistics about what's going on, why I'm not the only person that cares about this. It's big in the community. There's a lot of people that do it. Right now, 8% of people between 30 and 45 are vegetarian or vegan. That's a lot of people. So I let them know that they would be serving a large group, and then tell them, thanks again, and I hope that I can come. If this is a thing that's a make or break for you, let them know that. I would come to your event, but I'm not going to come if you're not going to give me food. So I have templates for organizations, for restaurants, and every time you contact them, they think about upgrading their menus so that people know whether they have plant-based food, they offer more, and you can amplify your message. So give that a try. You are not just a crank who wants something. You're someone who's being an activist when you go somewhere.
Thank you, Linda. Steve, I love your solar panels behind you. I wondered, I loved the story about the Bangladeshi microgrids. What steps can be taken here in North Carolina to implement distributed solar energy, either at the neighborhood or community level, like what we saw in the film? Is that even feasible?
Well, I will tell you that a lot of people don't know that North Carolina is already a pretty significant solar state. We're in the top 5 in the country, and we will probably hold on to that for at least another year or two as the systems that are in the grid in the queue work their way out. But we are not even close to the top 5 in the use of solar on buildings. North Carolina's policy situation with regard to putting solar on rooftops is not as good as it could be. And so we trail even South Carolina, which actually has pretty progressive policies and just put into place, or at least has just recently come to some agreements with Duke Energy down there to do some innovative stuff to help drive more rooftop markets. That said, solar prices continue to fall at an amazing clip, as does the price of energy storage, which is a big piece of that microgrids conversation. And as we see more and more storms in the state, there is increased interest from policymakers and from businesses to try and figure out how we can use solar for microgrids to improve the resiliency of our energy supply, so that we don't have to shut down businesses, we don't have to empty out the freezer when there's a power outage and throw everything away, so that we can do more to provide power at shelters and other places. So the technology is there, as they said in the film, and we in this country have work to do, because there's an entrenched system that we have to kind of work our way around and through in order to get to a future where we can more easily utilize these technologies. But we're definitely making progress, and that's the good news.
Thanks, Steve. So Tatiana, are there youth? Youth is such a big part of the film. We heard from children. It was framed around Velvet. Are there organizations that serve youth in the Triangle area that are standouts in engaging young people and thinking about their visions for our planet in 2040? Dawn mentioned how she loved the end of the movie, said, "What's your 2040?" So can you tell us a little bit about these organizations that work with youth in the Triangle?
Yeah, well, I think Amin is going to be happy because I'm about to mention his favorites. There's an organization called SHARE, Center for Human Earth Restoration, that used to do an ecology core program with minority students in Raleigh. And I've talked to the person who started that program, Randy, about the work that they did. And he talked about how they made it really intentional to make sure to bring the students' lives into the environmental education space. So I think that is really impressive. And then there's another organization. I haven't gotten to connect with the person who leads this organization yet, Yasmin from Enviro Kids, who does programming with students as well. They do a several-week program in the summer and teach kids about environment. So those are two, at least, that are operating in Raleigh that are doing really impressive work, and hopefully developing the next generation of environmental and climate leaders. But then there's other organizations. I mean, PEJ, we're trying to do a little something. We're trying to start a youth program, and we've already been engaging youth since inception. But we're trying to do a longer program in the summer that I'm trying to get some funding for right now to really help to develop some environmental justice leaders. There's national organizations like Groundwork USA who are doing really great work, and I engaged with them back when I was a student. So I think there's a lot of places where we can look, and I hope that it will become a little bit more mainstream to do really culturally responsive educational programs. But I do see that there are some right now that are doing that work. There's an organization in Atlanta that we partner with to do our Raleigh Watershed Learning Network called WAWA, and they're doing that kind of work. So there's a lot of folks. Maybe not it's not popular, it's not common yet, but there are several organizations who are doing that kind of work that are really impressive.
Thank you so much for that. It's exciting that we have so much interest in the area and so many people who are willing to meet kids where they are and give them choices and to make it fun and interesting and important, because I think young people really want to be powerful and important. And I would like to shift a little and ask Hope a little bit about Common Ground Ecovillage. You use a holistic approach there. How do you put different aspects of regenerativity into action across human and natural communities?
Thanks so much, Emily. It's a huge question. I'll try to address it as well as I can, as briefly as I can. And just to tell people a little bit about Common Ground, we are a forming agrarian intentional community, which means a farming community, on 112 acres of land in Orange County. We are located between Hillsborough and Mebane, just around where Efland is. And our plan is to build up to about 30 homes in a compact area, leaving as much land as possible for farming and for forests and wetlands. We don't have homes yet, but we do have a thriving farm at this point, which is great. And we have been building a community of people who want to live, as our vision statement says, in justice and harmony with each other and the land. So since we're working at the community level, we've needed to find some really viable integrated solutions that consider the whole land and will scale over 30 households. And I have to say that my gratitude to Linda Watson for bringing Pachamama RTP and Drawdown to this area, because that work has really helped us to look at what solutions could be we might not have thought about or could really be helpful for us in this community. And 2040 just reinforced some of our thinking. So I'd like to offer some of what we're doing. But I have to start by saying that, you know, something in the documentary that was implied but not really stated is that we need to be able to cooperate in order to be able to fulfill our future. There's a saying in the intentional communities movement that says that cooperation is the mother of sustainability skills, because clearly we can do together what we can't do alone. So we spent a lot of time talking about cooperation, and this talk tonight is a great example of this. And of course, the microgrid in Bangladesh is a great example of that. So we do spend quite a lot of time trying to find ways to cooperate. And one particular project is the barn that we're building right now. It's a fairly sizable undertaking. And we've had about 25 members come together from the planning and design stage, helping us to fund this thing, giving us monies, some of them sending in their stimulus rebate checks. We've had people actually building the barn, running errands, choosing paint colors, and most important, bringing cookies. So it's been a real community effort, and it's really helped build a lot of energy around how to work together cooperatively and do something that together that we would have to pay a lot of money for otherwise and not have anywhere near as much fun. So I want to talk about 4 specific areas from our community real briefly, and that's that relate to the documentary pretty specifically. And one is soil and food, then there's water, there's forest and village development. And in terms of soil and food, we are a farming community. So healthy soil is completely fundamental to everything that we're doing. Our land has been used and abused, extracted from, clear-cut, burned, and neglected for generations. And so we've had a lot of work to do. But in just 3 short years of doing some diversified and healthy organic farming, it's just astonishing how much richer our soil and more alive our soil has become. So we think a lot about that. We work a lot towards that, and we are dedicated to growing healthy food for ourselves and others. And we also are, looking at, this is for Linda, looking at growing more plant-based protein on the land so that we can be more self-sufficient in all of our food needs. And this year we have sesame and peanuts and black beans, and I can't wait. Wish us luck. Let the rain hold off. So next thing I want to talk about a bit is water, because that was also featured in terms of healthy soil. And I love that we're at the western headwaters of the Eno River and the Neuse River Basin. So we know that whatever we do at our Ecovillage, you're going to experience downstream. So our plan includes rainwater catchment, sculpting the land so that water goes into the soil rather than runs off. We have a septic drip field so that our effluent will be purified before it goes to the land, to an orchard where we plan to grow fruit trees and berries and graze animals. So water is a big part of our consideration in terms of how we're designing and sculpting our eco-village. We've got 70 acres of forests and wetlands, and both for carbon sequestration, carbon drawdown, also beauty, balance, habitat, for animals and what have you. We are committed to keeping most of that in conservation, and maybe someday we'll be doing silviculture and agroforestry, but not quite yet. And the last thing I want to talk about is the big nut that we have yet to crack, and that is our village development, and this is where our drawdown has been particularly helpful to us. We'd love to be a part of that 2040 story. We want to use viable technology now, cutting edge technology now, and we're really struggling to find ways to do that. So my first hat off to Steve Kalland and the North Carolina Clean Energy Center, because we're working with them as we speak to help us to design our best solar options for energy independence. And we also would love to be doing a microgrid, but the work that we've done so far, there are regulatory issues, it's really expensive, the backup uses fossil fuel. So I was very encouraged, Steve, by what you said about the potential for developing microgrids in this area, because we're on it. We would love, that's really what we want. So other than that, I think I'll just
And Hope, I know
Yeah.
that everyone listening
Yeah.
can't wait until they can come visit, because you guys
I'm
are
going
putting
on and
so
on.
many things into practice. And you know what really struck me is you're balancing not
Mhm.
just the desire for high-tech solutions, but you're also using low-tech solutions, like just integrating more organic matter into the soil to make it richer.
Right.
It'll hold more stormwater, sequester more carbon.
Yeah.
Speaking of sort of that high tech, low tech, let's switch gears a little to transportation. I know the movie showed autonomous vehicles, but you know, one change that you can make really simply is just hopping on a bike. So, Mary,
You
can you
queued that
tell
up
us
so
a little
nicely
bit?
for me. I appreciate that, Emily. I mean, that was kind of the takeaway I felt as well. Of course, in the transportation sector, there's a lot of talk about autonomous vehicles, mostly because that will, again, shift, I think, an economic option for folks to make money, right? I think one of the stumbling blocks of our current system that we haven't addressed quite yet is that capitalism is the name of the game here in the United States. And if somebody isn't making money, it usually equates to an issue with our larger systems. But if we're pivoting back to the transportation realm, yes, I really like how you started, Emily, by saying everything we have, we already, or everything we need, we already have, right? And I'm a big advocate of looking at our transportation system and thinking about ways that we can simplify that. And really, to me, that's how many trips can we change to walking and biking and taking the bus. For some people, that's a really easy thing to do if they live in an urban environment. For the most of the United States, though, we live in a much more suburban context where it's very difficult to do that, even though it shouldn't be. And we can retrofit our existing spaces. We have a lot of pavement, for instance, a lot of roadway that we could allocate to, I would argue, higher and better uses, but different uses. Right now, we put a lot of our transportation infrastructure toward vehicles traveling quickly and being able to go far distances. And really our entire economic system has been built around that. So it's a big challenge to retrofit that, but it's, I guess, a big opportunity too. And yeah, I really would like to think about ways that we can iteratively do that. And, you know, Raleigh right now has our first protected bike infrastructure going in, and that's a fun example. I know, girl, I'm excited, Linda. Thank you for the dancing hands there. But, you know, we're taking existing pavement and we're just putting in a protected all ages and abilities facility there. So we can do that all over the place. We need to do that all over the place with urgency. And although I think autonomous vehicles could offer an exciting option, my biggest pushback with that is we already do have autonomous vehicles, vehicles that drive you around everywhere where you work, you know, or do whatever you want. And they're called bus, you know. I mean, I took the bus every day to get to work, and I sat there and I worked on my laptop for 35 minutes, and it was great. You know, I see the appeal, but you just have to have the right land use to support that. And to date, we really struggle with our land use in the United States. So that's a big hurdle to overcome.
We have a great question from Megan in the audience. She loved the dashboard that Oberlin schools in Ohio used, and I did too. I did a little looking into that. She said it's increased not only knowledge, but help, you know, create a sense of a common plan or goal in the community. Does anyone on the panel know of any dashboard like this closer to home? I know so many folks talk about dashboards now, and it's a way of connecting data to people, but that's just one that I wanted to toss out. I'm seeing some no's, but that'll be something that we can all look into further, and I think it is a great engagement tool. So Steve, we've got a few questions in the audience, from the audience for you. You
I was
talked
trying to.
about having an entrenched system, and people want to know, particularly I think Deborah mentioned she'd like to know, you know, how can we get past that entrenched system? And then Denise wants to know, what can we do to spur North Carolina along in making it easier for businesses, residences, and public buildings to install solar panels? And she also adds, is the Utility Commission helping or hurting in this much needed option for clean energy?
Okay, well, that last part's dangerous ground for me, but in general, I would say that the Public Utilities Commission has recently had a lot of new members added to it. And I would say that many of those new members, at least on paper, should be pretty pro-solar. The new chair of the commission, Chair Mitchell, used to be a lawyer for a solar development firm in a previous life. And so we do have a lot more expertise on the Utilities Commission around clean energy than we have ever had before. And so I am cautiously optimistic we will see good things there. That said, we're kind of in the pregame, if you will, right now. Some of you may be aware that Governor Cooper last year issued an executive order around carbon reduction, Executive Order 80, which you can Google up and find it. Executive Order 80 had some broad goals in it around clean transportation and electric vehicles, as well as other types of energy use in the state. That led to something called the Clean Energy Plan, which came out of the Department of Environmental Quality, as well as an electric vehicle plan out of the Department of Transportation. And those two plans are now kind of completed, and now we're starting to implement them. The Clean Energy Plan in particular had 2 working groups that are meeting, and I swear it must be at least 1 to 2 3-hour Zoom meetings a day between all of the groups and subgroups. It is just killing me. But there is one group completely focused on carbon reduction strategies for the electric power sector. And they are talking about everything from eliminating the existing coal fleet in the state, just moving towards shutting it down with various financial tools that would help us to do that in a way that didn't kill the utilities' finances, to various programs like an expansion of the renewable portfolio standard to get more renewable energy out into the system. So all of those things are kind of out there moving in the right direction. And from a big policy standpoint perspective, I would say that the state is on the cusp of some potential really good things happening. And if you know your state legislators, I would encourage you to start talking to them about how important those issues are, even if the governor of an opposite party may have proposed them. Because if they hear from enough folks that these are important issues, then I think it will be an entertaining long session after the election in January. On the specifics of buildings and rooftops, there are things that can be done. We just saw some very interesting proposals come out of South Carolina in a legal settlement that's been proposed in front of the commission down there. The utilities and the solar companies had been fighting for years about something called net metering, which many of you may be familiar with, but it's basically in a non-engineering definition, it's basically the ability to put a solar system on your roof and run your meter backward if you have excess generation. That's not really what happens, but it's kind of a rough summary financially of how it works out. That is a huge issue for the utility. A, it kind of flies in the face of their business model historically. B, it creates a lot of issues around something called cost shifting, where people that don't have solar may be absorbing some of the costs associated with people that do have solar. And so everybody from low-income energy advocates to industrial client advocates, all get bent out of shape about this, even though the amount of net metering is pretty de minimis out there in general right now. So this new program in South Carolina, I won't go into all the details, but it sounds like an agreement has been raised down there that may address a lot of these concerns for everyone in a way that everybody can live with. And if that happens, we're going to see a lot more rooftop installations in that state. And the good news is that the general expectation is that if it's successful down there in getting through the Utilities Commission, we have a docket open in North Carolina where this will come up, and Duke Energy would likely bring it with them up here to implement a similar program in this state. So groups like the North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, the North Carolina Clean Energy Business Alliance, and others are watching this like a hawk right now. And I think there's a lot that can be done there. The last thing I would highlight is that there's a lot that can be done with local governments. My organization has recently been working with the town of Apex. We've worked with the town of Benson. We're just starting, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we're just starting to have some conversations about working with the town of Holly Springs about ways that we can help them to streamline permitting processes for solar installations to help make it easier to put solar on your roof, and other things that the town can do that are not really barriers so much as ways that they can help to facilitate and make it easier. There's a national program called the Soul Smart program, which cities and towns can get certified under. And we're very anxious to help communities in the Triangle and around the state to move in the direction of Soul Smart certification, because that means that they will have done what they can to help make it easier to put solar in place in their communities. That's a lot of talking. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. Thanks, Steve. I wanted to kind of shift the conversation, though you mentioned it, about equity. You know, we've got a question here that I think is a good one. The Paris Climate Agreement calls for implementation of solutions based on principles of equity. Outlines of the Green New Deal talk about the importance of environmental justice. So Tatiana, what are some components of equity and justice that should be included in the planning and implementation of climate and environmental solutions right here in the Triangle?
Oh, there are so many. And this is interesting because we were just on a call the other day and we were talking about equity and environmental justice issues in the Triangle. So one of the things that PEJ works on is flooding and inequitable impacts from urban flooding. And so I think that is one thing that needs to be looked at very closely. In particular, our work focuses on the Walnut Creek watershed and then Southeast Raleigh more specifically. But some communities don't have as many resources to recover from issues like flooding, even though they're hit the hardest when we have heavy rains, or when there are even natural disasters. I wouldn't call heavy raining a natural disaster, but heavy raining or natural disasters, they're hit the hardest and then don't have as many resources to recover. So I think that is one thing that needs to be looked at. Right now, we're advocating for green infrastructure with a development called the Downtown South Project that they're trying to get a rezoning approved in order to develop. It's a mega development, and they're trying to put it in an area that's already experiencing immense flooding, and that is when there's no development right there. So thinking about if this development does get in and it becomes a paved area, how much more that's going to impact the communities that are already being really hard hit is something that needs to be really closely examined. Beyond that, North Carolina has developed this mapping tool. It was announced, from my understanding, for the first time last year. And it's a tool where you can look at communities that have been overburdened by environmental justice issues. Unfortunately, that kind of is the beginning and the end of it. You just can look at this tool and see. It's not used in order to say, oh, this community has been really hit hard by environmental justice issues, and let's not put in any development or do anything that would continue to burden them. It just kind of stops there, like, oh, you can look at it and that's it. So I think we need to, and I kind of asked some state folks, I was like, all right, so, what's up with the statutes to address this? And they're like, oh, well, that's something that needs to be handled at a legislative level. So let's handle it at a legislative level then. Let's get some general statutes to address that. So that's just a couple. I mean, there are so many. Parks and green space inequity is an issue. That's another thing that PEJ has been champions for since the very beginnings back in the 90s. Our organization came up with the initial idea that was turned into what is now the Walnut Creek Wetland Center at the Walnut Creek Park. And so I think that's another thing, communities not having as much access to parks, not having as much access to the benefits that then come along with parks, like lower stress, health outcomes that are improved by having that proximity, the property values that are associated with those things. So really advocating for that access. I could go on, I really could, but
we could have a whole session just on this, because what kept ringing in my mind as you were talking was, you can't manage what you don't measure. And so looking at things that we can do in our community to measure equitable access, I think is one component of it. But yeah,
and
you're right.
Just care. I mean, too often folks don't really care about these issues, and and are maybe not even looking to see what's going on. It's easy to say something doesn't exist or is no longer a problem if you're not paying attention. So I think just have enough heart, have enough empathy to, I have to give a damn. I have to say it.
Yeah,
So that
no, that's okay.
so that, you know, we can actually do something about this. I can't say how many times people are just not paying attention in the first place.
Yeah, and ask basic questions like who pays and who benefits are really, you know, places to start. So we've got lots of questions for Hope, like, is it even legal to go off grid regarding energy and water? How much regenerative agriculture is really going on in North Carolina?
Right. Well, we are in with the Orange Alamance Water System, which is a private company, and it is in our zoning that we are able to refuse city water. We did a whole rezoning in 2015 to create our own zoning district, and so for us, it is legal to do that. I'm sorry I can't speak to other places in the state. And in terms of regenerative agriculture, though I don't have a lot of expertise on that in terms of where it's taking place, I can just say I just feel like it's starting to spring up all over. Certainly a lot in Orange County. Every other day I hear about another farm that's working regeneratively, that's growing organically. So I feel like it's a movement that's really growing, and also growing along with the movement for local food networks and for the desire to create a more local access to food. So that's the best I can do with that question.
Oh, thank you. I think people have a lot of interest in it. And I see one here for Mary. Mary, can you talk a little bit about what are the most practical and likely solutions for improving mass transit in the Triangle that can be implemented in the near future, like 2025, 2030? You know, there were references to the Orange-Durham County Light Rail Plan. So what are your thoughts around kind of that near term kind of opportunity window?
Right. Well, certainly, I think, retrofitting existing roadways to have all ages and abilities infrastructure for those to bike or to use another mobility device there is a really low-hanging fruit option. It's really inexpensive to install as well. Painting bollards are $30 a bollard. I have learned over time. It's more than that once you do all the engineering and everything, but insanely cheap compared to improving an intersection and widening it and adding additional capacity for cars. There is also bus rapid transit is something that's being done right now in the region, which is would simulate the feel of light rail, but it's also another lower cost solution. Ultimately, you need to have the right land use around these applications for them to work. So a bus only works as an autonomous on-demand vehicle if you have enough people in the walk shed for that to be able to be a viable option for them. So I think that as our region grows, we just need to be comfortable with having more neighbors if we already live in an urban area, and having infill happen in those applications so that we can have a more carbon neutral transportation system, because transportation is our leading emission if you look at the United States right now. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But we also have a system that's based on single occupancy vehicles. So I think that if we retrofit some of that space and make people feel comfortable using their bike or walking, that they'll start to do it for more trips.
Thank you so much, Mary. So I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but there's a favorite video that Pachamama shows. It's about the 4 levels of action. So there's individual, which is the first, collective, which is the second. That's like your church, your friends, your neighborhood. The third is your community, and the fourth is like state and national policy. And the environmental movement has largely focused on what can I do as an individual, 1, and 4, kind of this big state and federal. What do you, panel, and I'll let you maybe self-manage a little. If we get some overrun, I'll help manage it. But what do you think are steps that need to be taken in these middle sections, sort of the neighborhood organization scale and the community scale, to see action to realize a low carbon future?
Where to start?
Steve starting for us?
I guess I can. I
All
mean,
right.
in the clean energy space, there's a few obvious things. Certainly, we all have towns that have various environmental boards that have access to this town's leadership. And a lot of those boards, I will say, and I've served on a few of them in my day, although I've never served on my own in Cary, but I have served on them for the county and for other areas. And they don't tend to be focused on a lot of the issues that could really drive the markets forward for these types of technologies. They tend to be focused on, a camp or an educational activity. And while those are very important activities because we have to be getting the next generations ready to participate and to understand the salience of these issues, we're kind of running out of time. We kind of need to focus on the people that are here now to some extent. And so getting engaged in your community with today's policymakers on things that can be done today. And as the video showed, there's a lot of technology out there that is already available and works just fine. And a lot of that technology, it's just like Henry Ford said, the more you buy, the cheaper it gets. The more you build, the cheaper it gets. We're driving the cost curves down on all of this stuff right now. And so if towns and their leaderships hear that it's time to implement electric vehicle charging stations on a large scale, and they hear that there needs to be solar on schools and fire stations and police stations, they will listen because A, it's a lot more economically viable than it used to be, and B, because there's going to be a lot more people seeing the reasons that it needs to be done. And so I think that a lot of it really just comes to showing up and asking at this point in your local communities.
Thank you, Steve. I've got a question for you, Linda. Maybe if you wouldn't mind integrating your answer with this wonderful question we got from our online viewers. Jay Sline says, what impressed me the most about the film is giving people a vision of what the future could be like. He or she says, I would just like to get more visioning activities and films out there. So the question is there a plan in our area to market this or similar education films out there? They note that they're a plant-based doctor and know a fair amount about the best way to get people to change their behavior. So Linda, any thoughts on sort of harnessing tools like these, the nonprofits that have collaborated tonight to engage around topics that can make a difference?
Perfect.
And
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Jay. Yay for being a plant-based doctor. Please put your contact information in the chat so we can all go to you. Actually, I'm also with Pachamama, and we're getting ready to do a workshop that you'll learn more about at the end of this, but it starts Saturday. It's a 4-part workshop called Drawdown Solutions, Getting into Action. And we're going to, participants will look at the drawdown solutions, which are all these ways to either emit less carbon greenhouse gases or pull it back down into the atmosphere, see what's going on in the area, and then make a plan for making changes in our area. So one of those, first of all, we're going to be showing some of those films as part of the workshops, but one of the plans you could come up with out of that workshop is to have events like this, to work with local films, to work with local schools and whatnot, so that we could help drive that energy out. I'm sure you're aware of the PPOD, the Plant-Based Prevention of Disease Conference, that's been here for 4 years. It's a national conference that does just incredible work on the health benefits of plant-based eating. And they have open films that you can watch there too. And I hope that they'll come back. They, of course, had to go all online this year because of COVID. So that's my vision for that, is that we can reach out into all the networks, the businesses, the schools, the church groups, and so forth, and make this information available. And then to follow up with Steve, I love what you're saying about forcing the governments to do this. one of the last things I worked on with the Environmental Advisory Board was to get them to look at what food the city was serving and how they were doing purchasing. And the board is getting ready to send a memo to City Council outlining how they can reduce greenhouse gases doing this. The city has huge purchasing powers. So we all individually vote with our forks, but your city can really do that. And imagine if every time you went to a city event, it showed how you could do an event that was low waste. It showed what delicious plant-based options were available. It doesn't have to be 100% vegan, but it can have those items first, show off what it is, do that in the schools, and eventually everybody just sees this as being a healthy, beautiful way to live.
Thank you, Linda. I really enjoy the diversity of topics that we have here tonight on our panel. We are starting to wrap up, but we've got a couple more for Mary. Kathy would like to know, would a fleet of public e-bikes help get people out of cars?
I'm all about the
And
e-bike.
I have another one from Dawn that says, has public transportation taken a big hit because of COVID?
Oh, I mean, the implications that this is going to have for public transit are, I mean, I think, to be fair, a lot of industries are going to have to innovate after COVID. It was kind of a wrench in everybody's plans, and it has caused, wow, I don't think anybody saw that coming, right? But yeah, I mean, public transportation, ouch, talk about, it's just hard to think about. It kills me inside now. I'm even seeing like car culture is coming on strong, y'all. I mean, I'm just like always on my bicycle and stuff like that. And everybody's saying like, stay in your car. I go to get my kids flu shots, stay in your car. We'll come to you. And it's a lot of work has been done to like inch away and to make more people oriented places. And how will a disruption like this affect that? That said, e-bikes are the future. They're awesome. I can tell you, I have 2 little ones under 5 and they get heavy, and I got myself an e-cargo bike, and that thing's a game changer. I found myself having to like hop in my car more, and I wanted to be on my bike, and it opens up the world of biking to a lot more folks, where it might make it more accessible. And they're really fun to ride, and they're super easy. You don't really break a sweat here in North Carolina, but there's lots of reports saying that you do get actually physical exercise still, because you're out there and you're moving. And I think that's an exciting thing to see, and would love to see that be kind of the next step. As much as I like electric vehicles, those are great. I think that electric bikes could help with those 2-mile or less trips and get people out of their cars a little bit more.
I can attest. I thought I was too macho to try an electric bike. They're really fun, you guys, like really fun. So we have a lot of other questions coming in. I'm going to pass one to Linda, but I have another one that I want the panelists to just chew on while I talk with Linda about this next one. Is there one action you would like for people to take after this discussion? And I know there's lots of prompts in the chat about following towards zero waste. They're having movies. I see Marie Cephalo here from the town of Cary, who's doing a number of outreach activities with the Cary Theater. So I want you guys to kind of percolate on that while I talk with Linda a little bit. Linda, we have a question from Dawn, and she wants to know, is there any idea how we could get better food in our schools?
I think you just have to work through the PTA, PTOs to get it done. The nutritionists who work for the schools really want to do a good job, but I've been to some of their conferences and they are taken over by big food. I mean, it's tragic to see the pressure that's on there, and they also have very little money to work with. So the PTOs can push, but also the Got to Be NC program through the state has got some really wonderful ways that you can work with local farmers to bring local food in. And that goes back to sort of what I was saying about the restaurants. If you could say, we want to have healthy kids, we want to have alert kids, we want to cut costs, but we want to support local businesses. So how do we put the farmers, local farmers, in touch with the schools and let kids know how delicious real vegetables can be, and then they'll buy more of it, and you got this virtuous cycle going on. So that would be where I would go with that.
Thank you. I see an interesting question for Hope. We don't have a huge amount of time before we let everyone have their kind of last say, but I think it's an interesting one. It looks like we've got Leigh asking, do you have advice for dealing with difficulties? So I know doing a big ambitious project like this, you're going to see problems. Do you have any advice for folks when they're trying to think big and have vision? What's your advice for addressing the difficulties that you encounter?
Yeah, the best thing I can say is to prevent them as much as possible by being really clear about what your vision is, what your principles and intentions, what you're going for, what guides your decisions. I mean, right now we use a sociocratic governance system, and the reason it works for us is that there's no such thing as objecting on the basis of a personal preference. I like this, I don't like this. We have 36 principles and intentions. If it looks like something's violating something we say we stand for, then it's a valid objection. Otherwise, we really need to be looking at what is it that we commonly share, what is it that we all have gotten behind and agreed to try to create together. And so there's so much more I could say about that question, but fundamentally, at the very root of our Ecovillage is a very strong set of principles and guidelines that have kept us with a rudder to steer us through a lot of difficulties, including waiting years and years and years to actually get this done.
So patience, even.
Well, patience is good too.
Yeah.
Well, really determination. I mean,
Tenacity.
in our culture, we think that it has to happen fast, right? And that there's something wrong if you don't get it like really done real fast. And so for us, we almost feel like, we're waiting for the world where things are catching up. The world is catching up with us as we wait for things to become viable. And being thoughtful and deep and careful is and connected and paying attention to how you do what you do is that's what creates sustainability. That's what creates regenerativity. That's what creates a foundation that you can build on that won't fail you. You try to override that. You try to do the quick fix. You're just creating more problems down the road. We're doing this for 7 generations. We want to set it up well. And also be able to evolve as conditions change.
Thank you for mentioning that, Hope. That's very recentering. Some people say sustainability is about making decisions today without compromising the ability of those in the future to meet their own needs. And that's just really the heart of what you were talking about, that 7th generation. So thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would like to start as we began, going with each panelist. Just asking, is there one thing that you would like the audience to go away with tonight? And alternatively, where are the gaps, do you think? What changes do you think will be most necessary to realize a low carbon future that aren't currently being addressed? So this is kind of a free-for-all, but I thought I would give you a little centering around kind of final message and gaps that you see. So I'll start with Linda.
Thank you. We're in a time of great change. I mean, the elections, the coronavirus, the climate change, everything's changing right now. So civilization is open. We're in a point where the lever's going to work. So seize the day. Dream out as far as you can and think, what is it that I can get to happen and make that happen? Now, in my case, I would say, try to get as much plant-based food as you can into wherever you are. It makes a huge difference for the climate, but it also benefits in so many other ways. So look at how that helps with health, it helps with the local economy, it's thrifty. So as everybody is really on tight budgets right now, they could save money by doing the very thing that will help them out of this situation. Use your lever wisely.
I love that. Use your lever wisely. Next on our panel list, we have Steve. Any final thoughts for tonight?
Well, a few. I'll try to be quick, but
Okay.
number one, vote. I don't think there's anybody on this panel that doesn't understand the importance of that. I'm working early voting and election day myself. I can't work in a partisan position because of the nature of my job, but I will be a poll worker at Herb Young and a poll worker in Cary on election day, and it's the thing I can do, and everybody needs to find the thing that they can do and do it. The second thing is I've heard the expression about the 7 generations many times over the years, and I think the problem we've got is that we have barely 2 left to get something done on the climate issue. And so I am a firm believer that you have to work within the system, because if you try to go outside of the system, you're just going to pound your head and get a lot of dents. But that said, the system is starting to lean our way, and it is now the time to really push to try and make things happen. And so to the extent that you can use the system to push it the right direction, we don't need to get out of the system. We need to move the system in the right direction. This is the time to do it. So whether that's putting solar on your home or getting an electric vehicle, or Mary, you got to put the specs for your electric bike in the chat here so I can see what it looks like. Whatever things you can do personally, great. Whatever you can do to work with policymakers at the local level to get them on board, please do that as well. Talk to your parents, talk to your sister, talk to your brother, get everybody understanding how critical this is. I was looking at the Washington Post this morning. There was an article. Greenland is on pace to lose more ice than it has lost in 12,000 years this year. It is getting urgent out there, and we are running out of time. So that's all. I hate to be doom and gloom, but I'm worried about it. I got 3 kids, and I'm very worried about it.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, we have Tatiana, and I want to say thank you, Tatiana, for keeping the chat lively. You and Maple O have had some great points right here recently, but I want to give you your time in the sun and to give us some closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you said earlier, that this has been a nice, a good conversation with a lot of variety of topics to cover. In terms of gaps, one thing that was really blaring to me, I really enjoyed the film, and I do like the futuristic aspect of it and the more positive outlook, because there's a lot of films that really approach this from a doom and gloom, and we do not need that. We don't need people to think that that is the norm. And then like, all right, well, we're doomed, so let's just leave it alone. So, but I think there definitely was room to really have more of a discussion about equity. And I think there was a lot of room to have a discussion about how Black, Indigenous, and people of color are impacted adversely by environmental issues in the United States, worldwide. There's a lot of folks talking about those issues in Australia, which is where I think this was, the main guy was from Australia. So I think there was a lot of conversation that could have been had about that even there. So I would say in terms of a gap, that's something, but just for moving forward, I think if I was going to say that there's a takeaway, it's that there is something that can be done at every level of the system to address the climate crisis. And so I don't want anyone to feel left out of that or powerless, and just that organizing is a very important effort that needs to be undertaken. We're trying to do some of that with, launching friends groups and the Raleigh Watershed Learning Network and things of that nature. But there's room for everyone in this work.
I love that. There's room for everyone. Not only is there room, we need everyone, right? Okay, up next we have Hope. Hope, any closing thoughts for us tonight?
Yes, I'm going to say that I'm going to go back to my original point of cooperation. In terms of gap, we want to create a cooperative housing Ecovillage. We want to do this because we want to create affordable housing and affordable housing over time. And we want to create just all the benefits of a cooperative. And that right now is proving to be extraordinarily and extremely difficult. And just being able to somehow finance and fund an Ecovillage so that it is affordable is a huge it's a huge issue for us, and it's part of the reason why it's not there yet. We're not willing to have people pay $400,000 for a 1,000 square foot house. So having said that, I'd like to say that 2 more things. One is that don't give up. follow the path of most persistence. What else is there to do? That's what I say to myself. What else is there to do? We need to work on things that divide us, racial equity, economic justice, all of those things. Don't give up. Don't give up. And the last thing I want to say, because we're not going to give up, we need to go outside. Because if you need beauty, if you need balance, if you need refreshing, if you need intimacy with the land, if you need to be filled up, all you have to do is step outside and go to something green. And so developing that intimacy and relationship with the land is so crucial if we're going to be able to love our way into existing. So those are things that I would say.
Love our way into existing. Wow. Thank you, Hope. Last but not least is Mary. Mary, would you like to close us out?
Sure, I'll do my best. I mean, I think that I have two kind of messages for folks. One is that we have to keep pushing, not to quote Elizabeth Warren here, but big structural change, y'all. I mean, we have some really broken systems around us that are really failing us, and it's really difficult to ask individuals to recycle their way out of it, right? I mean, as we can see, those solutions aren't always going to be the panacea that we need. So I think we have to take the individual action constantly, always, keep that optimism, keep pushing forward to those things that are dear to you as far as that, I think find that thing that's really dear to you. We all have different things in the environmental realm that are our passions, and, listen in and learn so much from those others that know way more than I do in their issue areas, but carry your torch too and your passion, because that will light up other people and that will kind of lead the way for them. But I think we also, it is election season, and we do need to push our larger systems to do better for us, because they aren't doing the best right now.
And thank you for that note of positivity, though. I really appreciate it. And I feel like Leigh is a great voice for positivity and kind of a we can do it together kind of approach. And that's certainly Pachamama's approach as well. And so we've been enjoying collaborating with you. And Leigh, if you have any final words like to close us out, it's been a great panel. Thank you, panelists. It's been so wonderful.
Yeah.
Really, thank you.
And thank you, Emily. Yeah, we want to tell you about a few events. And I just want to say again, thank you on behalf of Pachamama RTP, River, UU, Earth Justice Team, and Towards Zero Waste. We do want to thank you for joining this discussion tonight. And a huge thanks to our 5 panelists and to the filmmakers, because it was a really great and inspiring film. If you want to continue to be involved on these issues, and I'm sure you do, there are a few upcoming events we want to tell you about. So if you're in Cary, you can join the eco community this Saturday at noon for Sunrise Cary's Rally for Mother Earth and Climate Action. Masks and social distancing required, and you can find more information on Facebook or at, I think we have that on our website. I'm not real sure, but we can get it on there real quick. Secondly, you can sign up for, Linda talked earlier about Pachamama RTP's Drawdown Solutions Workshop online, which starts weekly starting this Saturday through October 24th. So that's 4 Saturdays from 2 to 4:30 p.m. We will be working together to research solutions to the climate crisis, focusing on what is already happening in our area and plan projects to move forward with our communities. You can start a fresh project or join one that's already in progress, and we're going to be putting that link in the chat, so check that out there. You can also join Towards Zero Waste for our October book club. We have a kids book club and adult book club. This particular one I'm advertising right now is our adult book club. We are reading currently The Story of Stuff, and we'll discuss it via Zoom on October 22nd at 7 p.m. We would love to have you. In November, you can also join Dargan, say hi Dargan, and me for our 4th annual but first virtual Zero Waste 101 workshop. In this beginner class, you'll learn all you need to know to get started on your Towards Zero Waste journey. You can register for these events and more on Facebook, our Facebook page or group or meetup. And also, if you have found our events meaningful, please consider a donation to support our work. Toward Zero Waste is a nonprofit, and we can only do our work with the support of our community. I wanted to add, because I did catch it in the comments, Tatiana says that PEJ is partnering on a green workforce development program right now and has 5 spots open for this 6-week paid program. The job announcement went live today, and we would love to get some applicants from the marginalized background. So please share widely if you know anyone, and quickly, because it looks like it closes on 10/4. So yeah, that's just about
10:14.
Oh, okay, sorry, that was my typo then. Sorry about that. Oh, good, 10:14. So you have a little bit more time, but not much. So get on it. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Emily for moderating tonight, for everyone for coming, and we want to thank you, and we hope to see you at some of our next events. Bye bye, everyone.